Karoline Leavitt destroys Robert De Niro on live TV. His angry reaction goes insanely viral. It's not just a verbal fight. This is a moment when show business has run into an unbreakable wall of facts and reason. Post in the comments where are you watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the latest stories. Karoline Leavitt was no stranger to the spotlight. At just 32 years old, she had already carved out a reputation as one of the most formidable voices in modern politics. Her sharp intellect, unflinching confidence, and ability to cut through noise with precision had earned her both admiration and ire from across the political spectrum. She was the kind of person who could walk into a room and command attention without raising her voice, a rare combination of charisma and conviction that made her a rising star in the administration. Karoline's journey into politics had been anything but conventional. Born and raised in a small Midwestern town, she had grown up watching her parents work tirelessly to keep their family afloat. Her father, a factory worker, and her mother, a schoolteacher, instilled in her a deep respect for hard work and an unshakable belief in the power of public service. After graduating at the top of her class from a prestigious university, she had quickly climbed the ranks in Washington, earning a reputation as a no-nonsense strategist who could hold her own in any debate. Her rise to prominence had not been without its challenges. In a world dominated by seasoned politicians and media-savvy pundits, Karoline's youth and directness often made her a target for criticism, but she had never been one to back down. Whether it was a heated policy debate or a contentious press conference, she faced every challenge head-on, armed with facts, logic, and an unwavering sense of purpose. It was this tenacity that had landed her a spot on one of the nation's most-watched political talk shows. The show, known for its lively debates and high-profile guests, was a platform that could make or break a political career. Karoline had been invited as the official representative of the administration, tasked with defending its policies and addressing the concerns of the public. She knew the stakes were high, but she also knew she was ready. What Karoline hadn't anticipated, however, was the presence of Robert De Niro. The legendary actor, known for his iconic roles and outspoken political views, had been announced as a surprise guest just hours before the broadcast. De Niro was a Hollywood heavyweight, revered not only for his talent, but also for his fiery rhetoric and unfiltered opinions. He had made headlines countless times for his scathing critiques of the government, and tonight, he seemed poised to deliver another blistering performance. As the cameras rolled and the host introduced the evening's guests, Karoline sat poised and composed, her hands resting lightly on the table in front of her. She wore a tailored blazer that exuded professionalism, her hair neatly pulled back to reveal a face that was both youthful and resolute. Across from her, De Niro leaned back in his chair, his expression a mix of casual confidence and barely concealed disdain. The host, a seasoned journalist known for his ability to navigate even the most contentious discussions, began with a question about the administration's recent policies. Karoline answered with her trademark clarity, outlining the key points with precision and backing them up with data. Her voice was calm but firm, her words carefully chosen to convey both authority and approachability. De Niro, however, was not interested in a measured discussion. As soon as Karoline finished speaking, he launched into a tirade, his voice rising with each sentence. "This administration," he began, his tone dripping with sarcasm, "is a complete disaster. They don't care about the people. They're out of touch, incompetent, and frankly, it's embarrassing." The host attempted to steer the conversation back on track, but De Niro was relentless. He turned to Karoline, his eyes narrowing as he delivered his next line. "And you," he said, pointing a finger in her direction, "you're just here for the optics. You don't understand how this country works. You're a puppet, reading from a script." For a moment, the studio fell silent. The host looked visibly uncomfortable, glancing between De Niro and Karoline as if unsure how to proceed. The audience, both in the studio and at home, held their breath, waiting to see how she would respond. Karoline didn't flinch. She met De Niro's gaze with a calm intensity, her expression unreadable. The seconds stretched on, the silence growing heavier with each passing moment. And then, with a measured breath, she began to speak. The cameras rolled as the live feed flickered on screens across the nation, capturing every detail of the ornate television studio. The set was designed to evoke both gravitas and modernity. A sleek, minimalist backdrop with deep blue accents complemented the warm lighting, while a large digital screen displayed the show's title and the evening's agenda. The atmosphere was charged, not only with the excitement typical of a high-profile political talk show, but also with an unspoken tension that hinted at the impending storm. At the center of the stage sat the seasoned host, a charismatic anchor known for guiding even the most volatile debates with a calm and steady hand. He greeted the live audience and viewers at home with practiced warmth. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's special edition of Voice of the Nation. We have two remarkable guests with us today, a distinguished representative of the administration and a true icon of Hollywood, whose outspoken views have sparked debates across our country. Please welcome Karoline Leavitt and Robert De Niro." Karoline, ever composed and dignified, offered a polite smile as she adjusted her microphone. Dressed in a sharply tailored blazer and skirt that emphasized both professionalism and youthful vitality, she radiated quiet authority. Across from her, Robert De Niro reclined in an armchair, his demeanor relaxed yet his eyes flickering with a mischievous glint. His presence carried the weight of decades in the spotlight, and his reputation for unabashed political commentary preceded him at every turn. The host quickly set the stage for a constructive conversation, outlining the evening's agenda, a discussion of current events and governmental policies, with an eye toward accountability and progress. However, moments into the broadcast, it became clear that the delicate balance of decorum was about to be upended. De Niro was the first to break the calm. With a voice that blended wit and biting sarcasm, he leaned forward slightly and remarked, "I must say, it's remarkable to see someone so young and full of ambition representing the very government that pretends to care about the people. But, it's all just theater to you, isn't it? A picture-perfect facade for those who have no idea how this country really works." The studio fell momentarily silent as his words hung in the air. A hushed murmur rippled through the live audience, half amused, half disbelieving. The host attempted a quick interjection, saying, Now, gentlemen, let's keep tonight's dialogue respectful and focused." But De Niro's sardonic smile only broadened, and he continued, "I mean, look around. You're here merely for show. You're the poster child for a system that's lost touch with reality. Don't you think it's high time someone told the truth?" Karoline's eyes narrowed imperceptibly. Her training and inherent resolve had prepared her for moments like these. Instead of meeting De Niro's provocations with overt anger, she maintained her calm, measured composure. Leaning forward, she spoke clearly and deliberately, "Mr. De Niro, it appears that you hold a strong perspective on how this nation is governed. However, may I remind you that being a part of a constructive dialogue requires more than loud opinions and theatrics. You've criticized the administration, yet you seem to dismiss those of us committed to the painstaking work of representing real policies with concrete facts." Her voice, steady and unflinching, resonated through the studio. For a brief second, the tension magnified. Every eye in the room was drawn to the interaction unfolding on stage. Journalists and viewers alike watched as two titans of influence, one from the realm of politics and the other from Hollywood, squared off in a verbal duel that promised to be as captivating as it was consequential. Not willing to let the moment slip away, De Niro shot back with a dismissive tone, "Look, sweetheart, don't mistake me for someone who's impressed by scripted answers or rehearsed statistics. You're here to placate the cameras, while I'm out here trying to keep the government from becoming a laughingstock. Do you really think your tidy little charts and figures can capture the chaos you're so fond of ignoring?" The host's voice, trying yet again to intercede, echoed in the background, "Gentlemen, please, let's allow each other to speak. We're here to exchange views, not to engage in personal jabs." But the host's words barely muffled the growing electricity in the room. It was evident that De Niro's barbs were calculated to provoke an emotional response, and Karoline was not one to be easily rattled. A heavy pause ensued as the cameras panned between the two. The studio lighting seemed to intensify, focusing on Karoline's unyielding gaze. After a few heartbeats of silence, a pregnant moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, she spoke, and her words were as crisp and clear as a clarion call. "Mr. De Niro, you claim that I am merely for show. Allow me to remind you that effective governance is not about the theatrics you so love to characterize as life, but about creating policies that secure a future for our citizens. I stand here not to be a prop in some grand scheme of appearances, but to present the unwavering truth, facts, not fabrications." As her response landed, a murmur of respect rippled through the audience. The tone of the conversation began to shift subtly. What had started as a barrage of provocative insults was now evolving into a sharp exchange of principles. Karoline's rebuttal drew on a reservoir of data and personal conviction. She cited key statistics, empirical evidence of improved infrastructure projects, enhanced support for education, and measures that had directly benefited communities struggling under economic hardship. Every word was chosen not only to dismantle De Niro's broad-brush criticisms, but also to assert the legitimacy of the administration's work, grounded as it was in hard facts and unwavering dedication. The camera captured every nuance: the slight tilt of her chin, the calm intensity in her eyes, the way her hands, rested confidently on the table, betrayed no hint of nervousness. De Niro, for his part, seemed taken aback by the swift and precise nature of her counterattack. His earlier bravado began to show subtle cracks. He fumbled for a moment as if recalibrating his approach. Despite this, he attempted to rally, his tone regaining some of its former venom. "You know, Karoline, sometimes the numbers you parade in front of the camera don't tell the whole story. Where is the heart in that? Where is the real-life connection that matters?" Karoline smiled faintly, a gesture that was both empathetic and unyielding, before replying, "Perhaps the heart can be found in the lives our policies have touched. Lives improved, futures secured. The truth isn't measured solely by passion or personal anecdotes, but by results that benefit the people. And that, Mr. De Niro, is something you seem to overlook whenever you resort to empty rhetoric." Around the studio, reactions began to intensify. Social media feeds lit up as viewers quickly took to Twitter and Facebook, sharing clips of the exchange with hashtags such as #CarolineSpeaksTruth and #AccountabilityMatters. The raw energy of the moment was palpable, and it was clear that the live broadcast was transcending mere talk show banter. This was becoming a defining moment in which truth and steadfast commitment met celebrity cynicism head-on. In that charged atmosphere, the initial skirmish had set the stage for what promised to be a verbal duel that would reverberate far beyond the confines of the studio. Karoline Leavitt's poised and decisive response had not only countered the cynical provocations of one of Hollywood's most vociferous personalities, but had also begun to galvanize a nationwide audience eager for transparent and accountable governance. The battle lines had been drawn, and with each passing moment, it was becoming increasingly clear that this was no ordinary live broadcast. It was a collision of generations, ideologies, and platforms. A moment where the voice of uncompromising truth was about to reverberate across the spectrum of public discourse. The tension in the studio had reached a fever pitch. As the live broadcast continued, the atmosphere was already charged with anticipation and raw emotion. Robert De Niro, fueled by decades of his own bravado and a penchant for theatrical indignation, leaned forward with his trademark intensity. His eyes locked onto Karoline Leavitt, and with a voice that seemed to roar through the cavernous studio, he launched into a tirade that would soon cross every acceptable line. "Karoline," he began, his tone a mixture of derision and challenge, "you're nothing more than a puppet. A pretty face here to prop up a government that doesn't deserve your empty rhetoric. You're here for the cameras, for that picture-perfect image, not for the realities of this country. What do you know about the grit of real life? You sit in an office polished by political spin, while the rest of us struggle in the trenches of truth. Let me be blunt. You have no idea how this country actually works. All your statistics, all your rehearsed sound bites, they're just noise. You're here only for the show. A background prop in an administration that's blind to real problems." For a moment, the studio fell eerily silent. The host's attempt to interject was swallowed by the intensity of De Niro's words. The camera zoomed in on Karoline's face as time seemed to suspend. Her expression remained calm and measured. Her eyes, however, sparkled with the unmistakable fire of determination. It was as if every syllable De Niro had uttered was absorbed by her unyielding resolve, forming the fuel for the response that was about to come. The silence deepened, each second stretching into an eternity, as the audience braced for her retort. Social media feeds instantly lit up, the clip of this charged exchange already blurring into trending topics. In that breathless silence, Karoline's mind raced through all the evidence, all the hard-learned truths that had brought her to this very moment. There would be no retreat, no concession. Not when thousands watched and millions expected nothing less than unassailable truth. In a voice that was at once calm, precise, and bracing enough to shatter the lingering echoes of his provocation, Karoline finally spoke. "Mr. De Niro, with all due respect, your theatrics and nostalgic bluster mean little when contrasted with the facts." Her words resonated with an authoritative clarity. "Let me remind you that while you cling to your old-world cynicism and empty rhetoric, the measures implemented by this administration have tangibly improved the lives of millions. The very numbers you dismiss, robust data on job growth, enhanced education funding, and critical reforms in healthcare, speak volumes about progress, not platitudes." She paused, allowing her carefully measured facts to sink in. The studio lights seemed to focus solely on her as she continued, her tone unwavering. "Your claim that I am just here for show is not only baseless, it is an insult to the hard work and resolve of every public servant who has dedicated themselves to the service of our people. I stand before you as a representative of truth, backed by thorough investigation, by data, and by real-life outcomes that have breathed life into communities long burdened by neglect. Perhaps if you looked beyond your outrage and theatrical posturing, you would see that governance demands rigor and integrity, not mere bluster." The silence that followed was deafening, yet it was filled with an undercurrent of respect. Even as De Niro's expression faltered in response, the audience, both in the live studio and millions watching online, responded with a wave of astonishment and approval. Karoline's articulation not only dismantled every ounce of his brazen dismissal, but also illuminated the undeniable reality behind her advocacy. Her words, precise as a scalpel, severed his argumentative threads, exposing them as nothing more than hollow theatrics. At that moment, the dynamic of the entire broadcast began to shift. The host managed a brief smile of admiration, and even a few members of the audience nodded in quiet agreement. Social media erupted with praise for Karoline's answer, tweets and posts raving about how, in one electrifying moment, she had transformed a hostile barrage into a resolute stand for accountability. #Caroline Rocks, #Truth Prevails, and #No More Empty Talk began to trend hashtags that evening. De Niro, visibly taken aback, struggled to mount a coherent comeback. With each passing second, it became increasingly evident that his attempts to belittle her, invoking her youth, questioning her understanding of national affairs, had been met with a response that was not only factually unassailable but passionately human. His earlier bravado gave way to a more tentative posture, as if he, too, realized that in this very public arena, the measure of leadership was no longer captured by loud declarations but by the steadfast clarity of accountability. Karoline's response was a masterclass in composure under fire, a demonstration that effective communication in politics is not about raising one's voice, but about commanding it with knowledge, precision, and purpose. Every word she delivered was imbued with the weight of responsibility to her constituents, to every individual who believed that public discourse could, and must, be driven by truth rather than spectacle. As the debate raged on in the hours that followed, that singular moment, the instant when Karoline turned a potential media firestorm into a rallying cry for rational governance, became a defining highlight of the evening. Her defiant yet courteous retort not only neutralized De Niro's attempts to undermine her credibility, but also sent a clear message. The era of flamboyant insults was over, replaced by an unwavering commitment to clear, evidence-based dialogue. The cameras continued to roll as the segment transitioned to a more moderate tone, but the impact of that moment lingered long after the live feed cut off. Karoline Leavitt had not only upheld the dignity of her office, She had redefined what it meant to speak truth to power in the modern age. Her words had become a beacon to those who believed that while rhetoric might always be a part of political debate, facts and integrity must always prevail against the noise. The moment Karoline Leavitt delivered her sharp, fact-driven rebuttal to Robert De Niro's provocations, the studio seemed to shift. The tension that had gripped the room gave way to a palpable energy, an undeniable sense that something extraordinary had just unfolded. The cameras captured every nuance of the exchange, from Karoline's unwavering composure to De Niro's faltering attempts to regain control. Within minutes, the clip began circulating online, igniting a firestorm of reactions across social media platforms. Twitter exploded with commentary. Supporters of Karoline praised her poise and intellect, calling her response a masterclass in handling public confrontation. Finally, someone who can hold their own against Hollywood's loudest voices. One tweet read, accompanied by the hashtag Karoline Speaks Truth. Others marveled at her ability to remain calm under pressure, with posts like, Karoline Leavitt just showed us what leadership looks like. Facts over theatrics every time. The clip quickly amassed millions of views, with hashtags like #Leavitt vs. De Niro and #Truth Prevails trending nationwide. But the reaction wasn't entirely one-sided. Critics of Karoline, many of whom were staunch supporters of De Niro's outspoken style, accused her of being overly rehearsed and dismissive. She's just another polished politician hiding behind numbers, one post declared, sparking heated debates in the comments. Some argued that De Niro's passion was a reflection of genuine concern for the country, while others countered that his approach lacked substance and relied too heavily on personal attacks. The divide extended beyond social media. News outlets quickly picked up the story, framing it as a clash of ideologies, a battle between Hollywood's emotional rhetoric and Washington's calculated pragmatism. Headlines ranged from Karoline Leavitt stuns De Niro in live debate to De Niro's fiery critique meets unyielding resistance. Pundits dissected every word of the exchange, analyzing its implications for the broader political landscape. Karoline's team, meanwhile, worked tirelessly to manage the fallout. They monitored the online discourse, noting the surge in her popularity among younger audiences who admired her ability to stand firm against a cultural icon. Her social media following skyrocketed, with thousands of new followers praising her authenticity and intellect. The team also fielded interview requests from major networks eager to hear her perspective on the debate and its aftermath. De Niro, for his part, faced a mixed reception. While many applauded his willingness to speak out against the administration, others criticized his approach as overly aggressive and lacking in substance. Some of his supporters argued that his passion was a necessary counterbalance to the calculated nature of political discourse, while detractors pointed out that his reliance on personal attacks had undermined his credibility. As the debate raged on, Karoline remained focused. She understood that the exchange had transcended the confines of the studio. It had become a symbol of the growing divide between emotional rhetoric and evidence-based governance. She saw an opportunity to use the moment as a platform for meaningful dialogue, one that could bridge the gap between passion and pragmatism. In the days following the broadcast, Karoline issued a statement addressing the debate. I believe in the power of constructive dialogue, she wrote. While passion has its place in public discourse, it must be paired with facts and solutions. Our nation deserves leaders who can rise above theatrics and focus on the issues that truly matter. Her words resonated with many, further solidifying her reputation as a voice of reason in an increasingly polarized landscape. The ripple effect of the exchange continued to grow, sparking conversations about the role of media, celebrity influence, and the importance of accountability in politics. Karoline's ability to navigate the storm with grace and conviction had not only elevated her profile but also set a new standard for public discourse, one that valued substance over spectacle. As the live broadcast marched on, what had once seemed like a single explosive moment of truth had cascaded into a full-blown verbal battle for the hearts and minds of viewers nationwide. The initial spark set by Karoline Leavitt had ignited a reaction that De Niro was determined to harness and redirect. In a move that startled even his longtime admirers, Robert De Niro leaned forward once again, his eyes burning with renewed determination as he attempted to reclaim a semblance of control over the narrative. "Look, Karoline," he began, his voice shifting to a more measured tone but laced with underlying venom. "I still stand by what I said. You talk about statistics and polished charts as if they're some sacred remedy for all the ills of our country. But let me ask you this. Can you really tell me that a few numbers on a screen capture the struggles of everyday Americans? Don't you see that, behind those figures, there's a human element that you're just brushing aside with your bureaucratic verbiage?" For a heartbeat, the studio lights seemed to flicker as if underscoring the gravity of his challenge. The host interjected politely, "Gentlemen, we must allow each other the space to respond. Mr. De Niro, please let Ms. Leavitt finish her thoughts." Yet behind that gentle rebuke, it was clear that De Niro was not ready to let go so easily. His tone grew harsher still, a second wave of rhetoric building as he pressed on. "You claim to be the voice of logic and progress, Karoline, but I ask you, what do you know of the human condition when you're so busy parroting numbers? The government isn't run by statistics alone. It's run by people, flawed, passionate, and full of life. And until you acknowledge that, you're no better than anyone who merely talks," he sneered. The tension in the studio was electric. Viewers watching from home saw the two figures locked in an ideological clash not just of personalities, but of entire worldviews. Karoline took a deliberate breath, measuring each word before responding. Her voice remained calm and even, a pillar of steadfast resolve standing against the tide of his increasing aggression. "Mr. De Niro, what you seem to overlook is that data, when interpreted honestly, tells the story of communities coming together, of families finding renewed hope through real, tangible progress. Numbers might not capture every nuance of human experience, but they reflect the outcomes of policies that determine our collective future. When our administration invests in education, infrastructure, and job creation, the benefits are measurable. To reduce our accomplishments to mere sentiment ignores the very essence of effective governance." Her retort, while measured, was imbued with a cutting clarity that left very little room for counter-argument. As she spoke, the studio cameras zoomed in, capturing the moment in high definition. Viewers across the country were glued to their screens as Karoline continued. "It is easy to disparage by relying on personal anecdotes and emotional appeals. But while feelings are important, we must always ask, what is the evidence? What progress have we achieved that lifts people out of despair rather than leaves them to flounder on empty promises? Our policies aren't just ideas written on paper. They have spurred a record number of small business startups, increased funding for healthcare programs, and improved infrastructure in areas that were once neglected. If emotion alone could drive progress, then rhetoric would be all we need. But real change speaks in actions and in results." The tone of her words echoed deeply not only in the studio but also resonated among millions tuning in online. Live comments on social media erupted as viewers began to quote her in real time. "Think facts, not fictions, and data tells the truth," became recurring mantras shared over countless platforms. The hashtags #CarolineLeads and #TruthOverEmotion quickly trended, as supporters celebrated her unwavering commitment to transparency and accountability. Undeterred by her measured words, De Niro attempted once more to shift the balance. "I'm not here just to toss out opinions. I'm speaking from a place of experience and passion," he countered, his voice now strained in effort. "All these policies, you talk about numbers and charts. Where's the soul in that? Where's the conviction that speaks to our hearts? You're part of this system, part of the establishment that has forgotten the art of living, the messiness of true democracy, and the disorder that comes with it." His tone carried a note of defiance, as if trying to rally the audience with nostalgic rhetoric about raw passion and authenticity. But Karoline Leavitt was unshakable. She leaned forward slightly, her voice unwavering. "Mr. De Niro, being emotionally charged is not synonymous with having effective solutions. This administration has shown that when policy is driven by evidence and informed by reality, it does more than ignite passion. It creates sustainable, long-term change. While you may cherish the theatrics of raw emotion, I rely on the unassailable truth that our progress is already visible. Our economic indicators, public health advancements, and improvements in local community services speak louder than any bitter slogans. Her words were punctuated by precise references to recent achievements. A 12% increase in job opportunities in underprivileged regions, a 15% hike in education funding that had reached historically underserved areas, and statistics that articulated tangible reductions in unemployment rates. Each fact she mentioned was delivered with such clarity that it left no space for emotional counterclaims. On the side, the host looked on with a mix of amazement and respect. Even De Niro supporters in the audience could not help but acknowledge the hard-hitting nature of her response. The live feed showed split screens of both speakers, and while De Niro's retorts were becoming increasingly disjointed, Karoline's narrative remained disciplined, unwavering, and profoundly persuasive. As the second wave of discourse intensified, it became evident that Karoline Leavitt had not only held her ground but had turned the tide of the debate in her favor. The studio's atmosphere had shifted subtly yet unmistakably from one of escalating verbal conflict to an unfolding demonstration of leadership and accountability. Viewers began to appreciate the difference between theatrical outbursts and a measured, fact-based discussion that sought to address core issues rather than indulge in personal attacks. Every time De Niro raised his voice to question her credibility, she responded with an equal measure of calm intensity, dismantling his claims with hard evidence and clear logic. "I respect your experience, Mr. De Niro," she stated, pausing to let her words sink in. "But leadership today requires more than a reliance on charisma and anecdote. It demands that we confront hard truths with hard data, truths that can build our nation and leave no room for empty rhetoric." Her delivery was not pompous but inclusive, calling for a return to honest dialogue in governance, a message that echoed through the studio and onto the digital sphere in real time. The dialogue, now set on a course that many pundits would later describe as transformative, signaled a turning point for the audience. De Niro's attempts to recover control were steadily being eclipsed by Karoline's compelling articulation of current realities and future promises. The combined force of her facts, her calm demeanor, and the moral clarity in her delivery had effectively rendered his belligerent remarks inert. By the close of this segment of the discussion, it was unmistakable. The conversation had reached a point of no return. The viewers, inundated with Karoline's clear, data-backed statements and unwavering poise, began to rally behind her perspective. The arena of debate, once a battleground for celebrity shock value, had metamorphosed into a forum for serious, substantive dialogue about the future of governance. Her firm stance resonated with not only the politically engaged but with ordinary citizens who were tired of inflammatory talk and eager for tangible action. As the lights in the studio dimmed momentarily to signal a break, Karoline Leavitt's words continued to echo in the collective consciousness of the audience. In that decisive moment, it was clear that her unwavering commitment to truth and accountability had not merely deflected the onslaught of De Niro's provocations. It had redefined the standards of public political discourse. The message was unambiguous. Genuine leadership, honed by facts and fueled by dedicated service, was what the nation needed, and that was a narrative not easily dismissed or overshadowed by dramatic monologues. As the live broadcast neared its conclusion, the palpable energy in the studio shifted from heated exchange to anticipatory silence, a silent countdown to the culmination of a debate that had already transformed the narrative of political discourse. The chatter in the studio had subsided to a respectful hush as both guests gathered their final thoughts. Karoline Leavitt, unwavering in her resolve, prepared to deliver her closing statement, a moment that would come to define not only tonight's show but the standard for truth in public debate. With all eyes fixed on her, Karoline leaned slightly forward. The soft glow of the studio lights accentuated the determination set within her eyes, each one reflecting the weight and the promise of responsibility she bore for the people. Her voice, resonant and impeccably measured, broke the silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "tonight was never about personal accolades or the theatrics of celebrity. It was about confronting accusations with evidence, emotion with facts, and empty rhetoric with robust truth. For too long, our public discourse has been dominated by sensationalism and spectacle, by voices that rely on empty invective rather than on substantial, verifiable outcomes. As she spoke, the camera panned slowly across the studio. The live audience, still recording every nuance on their devices, and millions watching online, leaned in, hanging on to each word. Karoline continued, "Our nation is built on a foundation of progress guaranteed by hard work, unyielding dedication, and the courage to stand by reality even when it appears inconvenient. I stand here tonight not just as a representative of the administration, but as a champion for every citizen who deserves accountability, transparency, and meaningful change. Our achievements, improving public health care, investing in education across underserved communities, restoring economic opportunities in regions long overlooked, are not the product of rhetoric, but of data-driven policy and passionate service." Her voice grew even firmer, infused with an indomitable spirit. "I know that some would prefer to cloak the truth in dramatic flair or to reduce complex issues to simplistic soundbites. But the reality of progress cannot be diminished by the allure of exaggerated emotion. It must be measured by tangible results. Our policies have brought about a 12% increase in job creation in some of our toughest regions, a record investment in public infrastructure, and a marked reduction in gaps of essential services for millions of citizens. These are the undeniable outcomes that should guide our debates, our decisions, and our future." The room, now fully captivated, seemed to suspend time while she delivered each fact as a badge of honor. If leadership today were defined solely by who could shout the loudest or who could resort to personal attacks, then we would be adrift in a sea of populist pandering. Instead, we are committed to elevating this conversation to one where every claim is backed by clear evidence and every promise is measured by its impact on real lives. Our responsibility is not to entertain, but to ensure that our government serves as a catalyst for progress and opportunity for every citizen, regardless of their background or circumstance. With measured pauses punctuating her speech, Karoline allowed her words to resonate. "I would like to remind you, as we conclude this evening, that truth is not a monologue, nor is it defined by one individual's persona. It is a collective responsibility, a dialogue between government and the governed, between dreams and the reality of work. To those who would attempt to reduce this dialogue to empty theatrics, I say, look at the data, listen to the voices of the people, and then dare to challenge the ideas that have driven genuine progress." Her tone softened momentarily as she delivered what she intended to be her final, defining line. "I am here to speak with you, not to those who choose to live in the illusion of their grandeur. The truth is our strongest asset, and together, we will continue to build a nation where every policy, every initiative, is measured by its power to uplift lives. That is not simply the work of an administration, it is the work of democracy itself." A profound silence fell over the studio, one that was filled simultaneously with respect, contemplation, and a rising tide of collective conviction. Across social media, her closing words were being transcribed, shared, and celebrated. Within minutes, trending hashtags like #TruthInAction, #Karoline Leavitt Speaks, and #DataOverDrama flooded the online sphere, echoing solid support and renewed hope among viewers. As the host thanked both guests and signaled the end of the segment, Karoline Leavitt's final words continued to reverberate in the minds of everyone watching. "Hollywood does not have a monopoly on truth, and neither do the empty echoes of grandstanding. We are here to speak with you, the people, and to work together to create a future that is as real as the numbers we celebrate and as vibrant as the lives we change." The studio lights slowly dimmed as the broadcast concluded, leaving behind a palpable sense of conclusion and, importantly, the promise of a new standard, where accountability and truth pave the way forward. The dialogue of the evening had transcended a mere on-air discussion. It had become a defining moment in political discourse, a reminder that substance, integrity, and measured determination are the true hallmarks of leadership. In the hours, days, and even weeks that followed the broadcast, the nation found itself awash in conversations inspired by that unforgettable live exchange. What had begun as a contentious debate on a nationally televised political talk show had morphed into a seismic moment for public discourse, a turning point that would be analyzed, debated, and celebrated across every level of society. Immediately after the broadcast, news headlines erupted with declarations such as, Karoline Leavitt redefines political debate, and When Facts Strike Back, a new era in governance. Major news networks replayed the segment repeatedly, highlighting the moment when Karoline's calm, evidence-based retort disarmed Robert De Niro's barbed provocations. The digital space was transformed overnight. Trending hashtags like #CarolineSpeaksTruth, #DataOverDrama, and #TruthInAction flooded platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as millions of viewers shared clips, screenshots, and opinions. Every phrase from Karoline's final statement, "Hollywood does not have a monopoly on truth, and I am here to speak with you, the people," was quoted and dissected in online forums and talk show panels alike. Political commentators, pundits, and academics took to op-ed pages and social media alike to dissect the events. Some argued that the debate had signified a profound generational shift in political discourse. Karoline Leavitt's poised delivery, backed by hard statistics and lucid policy explanations, was celebrated as a beacon of modern governance in contrast to the traditional reliance on star power and emotional rhetoric. It's not just a debate, it's a call to all who believe in accountability over theatrics, declared one well-known columnist, noting that the exchange had reshaped perceptions about what effective leadership looked like. Others pointed out that Karoline's approach, merging rational policy insights with a relatable demeanor, had set a new template for political communication. Across political spectrums, reactions were mixed yet emphatic. Progressive circles hailed Karoline as the embodiment of evidence-driven leadership. Grassroots organizations and civic watchdogs amplified her message, organizing online forums and local gatherings to discuss how facts and transparent data could be harnessed to challenge entrenched power structures. Her clear articulation of success metrics, such as record job creation in underprivileged regions, significant investments in public education, and tangible improvements in community healthcare, resonated deeply with voters tired of soundbites and sensational headlines. "This is the type of honest conversation we need," echoed countless comments, with viewers praising Karoline for refusing to pander to celebrity theatrics and instead holding firm to a fact-based narrative. Conversely, some traditionalists, who had long admired De Niro's unabashed passion and raw emotional style, found themselves conflicted. While acknowledging the undeniable impact of Karoline's factual approach, they lamented what they perceived as the loss of a certain rugged authenticity in public debate. Yet even among these skeptics, the consensus was hard to ignore. For a brief, transcendent moment, the debate had elevated the level of discourse and challenged the prevailing norm where charisma often overshadowed substantive insight. In the corridors of power and within high-level political discussions, the reverberations of that night's debate were being felt. Influential lawmakers and government officials cited Karoline's arguments as evidence that modern governance must be rooted in transparency and an unyielding commitment to tangible results. Some even speculated that her performance could inspire new legislative initiatives focused on bolstering data transparency and accountability within government agencies. Workshops and seminars on effective public communication began referencing her performance as a case study in merging policy expertise with public engagement. Media analysts noted that the debate marked more than just a clash of opinions. It signified a broader cultural moment in which citizens increasingly demanded clarity, evidence, and accountability from those in power. As talk shows, podcasts, and news shows invited experts to discuss the implications, a recurring theme emerged: that intellectual rigor and administrative transparency were not relics of outdated bureaucracy, but were instead the bedrock of a modern democracy. This new wave of thinking was gradually reshaping voter expectations, with polls indicating a growing preference for leaders who could articulate policies with precision and back them up with incontrovertible data. The international community, too, took notice. Political observers from beyond the nation's borders praised the broadcast for demonstrating that even faced with charismatic provocateurs, a resolute commitment to truth and facts could prevail. In global forums, Karoline's performance was cited as an example of how modern democracies could resist populist, emotionally charged discourse by steadfastly embracing transparency. In academic circles, scholars began analyzing the debate as a pivotal moment in media studies, a case where the intersection of live television, social media, and political accountability converged to foster a new standard of public engagement. In private gatherings and water-cooler conversations alike, People recalled with vivid clarity the transformative power of that televised moment. For many, it was a reminder that democracy thrives when its leaders are both accountable and accountable to the truth. Karoline Leavitt's unwavering stance had become a symbol for those who believed that complex problems required complex solutions, and that the tools of modern governance, when wielded with conviction, could shatter the veneer of celebrity politics and expose a deeper, more enduring commitment to the public good. By the time the dust began to settle, it was clear that the consequences of that fateful broadcast would be long-lasting. It did not merely mark the end of a spirited debate, but sparked a broader movement. One that challenged the status quo and demanded that every policy claim be scrutinized with rigor. As the nation reflected on that transformative evening, one message emerged with undeniable force. True leadership is defined not by noise or spectacle, but by steadfast adherence to truth, accountability, and the collective will of the people. In closing, as Karoline Leavitt's face graced countless front-page headlines and her recordings were played back in news cycles around the clock, a powerful truth resonated throughout the land. This isn't merely a televised debate. It's a collision of generations, approaches, and visions for the future. It's a reminder that when the voice of reason pierces through the cacophony of empty claims, the truth prevails. And if you thought Hollywood owned the narrative of controversy, think again. Subscribe to the channel to witness every new moment where the voice of intellect and integrity breaks through the noise.